The 7th episode of Rick and Morty opens with our dynamic duo traveling into a thick, mystery-filled jungle. There, they manage to find a very ancient tree that possesses top-tier sap, which Rick has been craving for a long time. So, wasting no time at all, the guys pull out their energy machetes and start chopping away at a large part of the tree to keep more and more sap flowing. The trouble is, they don't notice that the tree is actually alive, and its branches are slowly creeping up on them. Before they can do any more damage to the tree, they get suddenly snatched up by the branches, which hoist them into the air and pull them right up to the tree's face. It turns out to be a powerful living being that is absolutely furious about what they were doing and plans to punish them. As expected, the guys immediately apologize for their boldness and beg for forgiveness, claiming they are just adventurers and not scavengers who came there to destroy it. But to the tree, being space travelers is something far worse. They devour their own worlds and then arrive like a plague from the stars to destroy what is sacred and blessed in that place. He has the perfect punishment for monsters like them, and a few seconds later, the guys are forcefully sucked down into the depths of the earth. There, they end up turning into two spheres of light that swiftly travel along the tree's branches until they are finally thrown forcefully into a source of clear water. And it is right here that it's revealed they have been turned into two primitive unicellular organisms with a minimal size and zero hopes of getting out of this mess anytime soon. Now that they have been turned into simple amoebas, they have many other creatures around them, and one of them appears out of nowhere to give them a guided tour of the place. His name is Gary, and he friendly introduces them to everyone who has been trapped there for a long time. It turns out that the sacred tree transforms everyone who wants to plunder its valuable sap into these tiny things. And once Gary makes absolutely sure that the guys trust him, he betrays them and attacks to steal their cytoplasm, managing to ruthlessly murder them both in seconds. The problem with this is that once they die a violent death, they end up being regenerated by the mystical branches of the tree and return right to the starting point. At that moment, Gary appears in front of them once again, much larger than before. But Rick is not about to let him do the same thing to them again, so he furiously attacks and kills him instantly, feeding on his cytoplasm and achieving a much larger, colossal size. Having an extensive understanding of what biological evolution actually means, the guys begin their journey all over again with patience, quickly moving from unicellular to complex multicellular organisms, and then using constant cellular mitosis until they finally manage to become two small tadpoles swimming around in the deep pond. From that point on, they just have to keep doing the exact same thing until they transform into agile fish, a peaceful experience that Morty seems to enjoy a lot, since they only have to swim freely through the water without worrying about anything else in the world. The only real downside is that they cannot stay there forever, enjoying the water. After a good while, they finally touch dry land with their new limbs. The only big problem is that the outer surface is completely full of deadly dangers. In this wild place, everyone is closely watching to devour other creatures, and if they don't have enough physical strength to defend themselves, they will also become some predator's dinner. From there, they can clearly see the base of the giant tree, which means that if they manage to reach that place safe and sound, they will begin their definitive rebirth cycle, and perhaps they can become the humans they were before. Unfortunately, Morty cannot stand the harsh transition from the water to the land, so he ends up slowly suffocating on the shore, and Rick has no other choice but to take his own life instantly so that both can start from scratch back in the pond. On their next attempt, they completely forget about being simple fish and successfully manage to progress until the moment they turn into spiders. But that also fails miserably, and they end up dying tragically by being eaten alive by a giant fly. Who wouldn't be more than happy to return the favor in such a highly ironic way? On their third attempt, they turn into majestic birds and manage to fly directly up to the high branches of the tree, anxiously hoping that by touching it, they can become full humans once again. Unfortunately, they get too distracted talking mid-flight and end up being caught by the moving roots, which mercilessly crush them until their bones snap and restart the cycle. Dinosaurs, rats, monkeys. The guys try every single kind of evolutionary combination, and absolutely nothing works out for them. And worst of all, with so many failed attempts, they are drawing way too much attention from prehistoric animals that are far larger and more dangerous than them in that jungle. Tired of all this and highly frustrated by the constant failures, Rick begins using a sharp rock rock to shape a thick branch until he manages to get a rustic spear, and he uses it to brutally take the lives of some apes that were trying to bully them. While Rick furiously stabs the apes on the ground, Morty begs him in tears to stop, saying that none of this is necessary to move forward. But to Rick, it actually is, as he is violently recycling all the anger and deep frustration he is being subjected to in this loop. With half a dozen dead apes scattered around him, Morty ends up being suddenly crushed by one of the heavy corpses and dies instantly. So he immediately returns to the starting pond, waiting for Rick to show up by his side soon, but that doesn't happen that way at all. After spending a good while waiting around on the shore, he ends up meeting a completely new amoebic guy who patiently assures him that he is not violent and plans to calmly teach him how the cycle of life actually works in this mystical place, since they shouldn't fight it with weapons, but rather just let themselves go with the flow. Serving Mother Nature is the correct decision in this ecosystem. So, in this brand new life opportunity, Morty ends up turning into a docile worker bee, collecting sweet pollen and pollinating wildflowers. Nothing that involves spilling the blood of other creatures in any way or ruining the lives of people. But that doesn't mean at all that they are entirely exempt from the wild dangers of the outside world, since while they were very busy doing their daily chores, a huge enraged ape attacked the beehive and mercilessly killed a large portion of the bees. So once again, they had to start from scratch in the pond. But by that exact moment, Rick had already made massive evolutionary progress, as he had died so many times on his own that his accumulated experience was vast, and he began to cruelly enslave other lesser species for his own benefit. Rick had created an entire heavily guarded camp all around the base of the tree, looking for an effective way to climb it and finally get out of there. One by one, Rick coldly sacrificed his vassals just to figure out all the possible ways the protective tree could kill them, meticulously writing down data on every single cruel method of death that exists in that environment. As the days went by, he realized that climbing the tree was a nearly impossible task. The complex ways it has to defend itself against intruders are almost infinite. So he decided to do something completely drastic. If he cannot climb it the easy way, then he will chop it down completely using rustic technology. After building a massive mechanical saw whose heavy end was connected to a pulling cart, he began cutting into the massive base of the tree, successfully drawing the immediate attention of the sacred face that lived up above, and it decided to drift down to start talking seriously with him about his destructive behavior. Upon seeing what they were doing down below, the mystical face decided to activate an advanced cellular regeneration system, causing the deep wound to close up at the exact same time they were cutting it, completely ruining his logging plans. But this was not the only brilliant idea that Rick had come up with to subdue nature, and after the forged iron failed, he tried to destroy it with elemental fire, cleverly channeling several pipelines of burning lava directly toward the tree to try and turn its base into ashes within a few minutes. But since the tree has complete mystical control over this world, it can channel heavy rain and use it to stop the fire instantly, ruining Rick's plans once again, who is running completely out of brilliant ideas, and the great tree knows it perfectly well, so it cruelly mocks him right to his face. On the other hand, Morty continues living at the peaceful pace this wild place imposes on him, and now, along with his new friends, they have turned into quiet seashells deep under the ocean. After that, he went through a dozen more different species, turning into majestic whales and other kinds of exotic animals. But each of these monotonous lives made him see how boring the next one truly was, and that they had been living in evolutionary circles for an incredibly long time, finally understanding that this was not the definitive way out he was looking for to get back home. So he decided to do something completely drastic about it to change his destiny, and on his next life cycle, he tried being a strong tree, managing to make his roots grow and grow without stopping all across this immense world, even wrapping themselves over the sacred tree itself and successfully carrying him all the way up to the highest summit. After a long lifetime of constant growth, one of his plant shoots finally managed to successfully break through to the outer surface, and Morty found himself face to face with his old jailer, who happened to be completely asleep at that moment, making this a unique and golden opportunity that he could not afford to pass up under any circumstances. But the great mystical tree quickly realized this, and to prevent him from moving further upward and stealing more of its vital energy, it struck him with an enormous, destructive force and sent him right back to the underground underground world, so that he would have to start from scratch all over again, and so his new life cycle would feed its energy back into it, since that was the true purpose of every single being down there. By that exact moment, Rick had already turned himself by force into the supreme ruler of all the living beings in this underground land, but he still hadn't found a technological way to overcome the tree. So, after seeing what Morty had achieved on his own, he decided that none of those military methods would actually work, and he simply let himself fall into the void to start from scratch alongside his friend. Upon seeing him, Morty frustratingly confessed that the sacred tree is evil and feeds directly off their constant cycles of death, so there is no conventional way of escaping from this place. Going by what it told them at the beginning, it only tricked them with lies to make them blindly believe there was some sort of peaceful nirvana at the end of the evolutionary tunnel. Basically, the more of them die in the attempt, the more food and energy the great tree will receive. So the true solution lies in establishing a reign of absolute peace where nobody dies, causing the great tree to dry up by not receiving the vital nutrients it needs from them. So on this desperate attempt, they manage to hold on tight to their human side and quickly evolve into the undisputed leaders of the entire ecosystem. They spread the idea that the tree feeds exclusively on their deaths. So if none of them die from now on, then the tree will begin to grow much weaker and they will finally be able to defeat it. To achieve that, they have built a sort of technological ark right inside the deep rock, where all the inhabitants are supposed to enter for protection. Once everyone decides to enter in pairs into this strange social experiment and bet one last of their lives on Rick's crazy idea, they discover that Morty has evolved into a symbiotic plant form and has covered the entire cave with a luminous moss that allows them to see, which only needs their organic waste to produce the clean oxygen that will keep them alive. The only thing they absolutely must do is not fight and live in peace, so they can keep themselves alive for as long as possible until the tree begins to notice it is running out of vital energy. Regarding their daily food, Morty has managed to successfully evolve into every single type of fruit tree possible, so he can produce an unlimited amount of all the nutritious fruits they need. And for years, each and every one of the species manages to live in complete peace. They even hold beautiful interspecies weddings, making the hidden paradise they created actually work to perfection, while the land outside the cave begins to completely wither away. By the time the great tree finally awakens from its long slumber, it realizes there isn't a single green leaf left on its entire body and that its dried up roots are a deadly problem. So it decides to urgently descend to see exactly what is happening in the underground world that is supposed to provide it with all its energy. Upon arriving downstairs with great difficulty, it realizes to its horror that everything on the surface is dead, and every single living being that should be providing it with energy through each of their evolutionary cycles has cleverly barricaded themselves inside a sealed cave to let it starve to death outside. The very first thing the massive tree found before descending is a direct message written in glowing moss that read, "Go to hell," and it finally realized that the living beings beneath its roots had completely uncovered its dark secret. If they didn't die, it simply wouldn't live. But that wasn't all. The exact moment it got close enough to read the message with total clarity, it was revealed that they had been patiently waiting for it, and it had fallen straight into a deadly ambush, where Rick and the rest of the gathered living beings fired several giant spears right into its face, tied with thick vines so they could drag it down. The entire upper section of the rock had been turned into a tactical battle zone, perfectly concealed beneath the protective moss, where the guys had previously built several giant ballistas and had woven vines strong enough to subdue the tree, which found itself extremely weakened by the lack of nourishment they had flatly refused to provide by choosing to live in peace. Rick loudly motivates his men to pull with all their might, but they aren't at the top of their physical capacity either due to the confinement. Nevertheless, they decide to give it their all in this final push and keep firing the spears to successfully rip the tree out by its roots and open up a massive hole that will lead them straight to the surface. One by one, the massive tree's strong branches begin to fragment and suddenly snap, allowing the bright sunlight to finally pierce through the rocky ceiling, giving the guys great hope that they will be able to escape that horrible place very soon. When Rick shrewdly realizes that they are right on the verge of defeating it completely, he orders the definitive baseline of the plan, which means firing a destructive volley of spears straight into the very base of the tree, the only thing still keeping it attached to the fertile earth and the perfect spot to exploit its physical weakness. It takes his trained soldiers only a mere fraction of a second to hit the exact target, and they immediately begin to pull the tree right where it is weakest. Now, nothing is left but an intense battle of pure resilience to see which side can withstand the pressure the longest. And as expected, the great sacred tree, which was already almost completely dried up from the lack of vital energy, ends up giving in entirely, and its main roots rip away from the rocky ground, granting a historic victory to Rick and all the living beings who had been trapped down there for countless life cycles. Defeated and deeply saddened on the ground, the dying tree asks him with profound confusion how it is even possible that none of them truly hate their neighbor or want to cause each other mutual harm in that confinement, maliciously claiming that they still have time to betray one another. Any sign of contempt or anger at this crucial moment would give it enough mystical strength to rise back up with fury, but it is already far too late to convince those who were its long-suffering prisoners for so many eras. Everyone has learned to live in absolute peace and harmony, and absolutely nobody causes harm to anyone else in that community. That is, without a doubt, the greatest display of mental strength they have been able to achieve together. And a few seconds later, the mother tree finally dies of starvation, immediately allowing everyone to return free to their respective homes in whatever evolutionary form they currently possess. But some of the inhabitants are not entirely content with staying like that forever, so they anxiously ask Rick if he has any technological solution to return them to their original flesh and blood bodies. And he, with his classic nonchalant attitude, tells them that they just have to believe with all their might that it's actually possible. He kindly asks them to close their eyes and concentrate for a couple of seconds on their former physical forms, but the very moment they obey the instruction, he takes off running at full speed toward the spaceship alongside Morty to definitively escape that cursed planet before something else imprisons them once again for an inexplicably long amount of time. While the rest blindly trust that they are about to magically return to their original bodies, we can clearly see how Rick boards a small, hot air balloon that he built in secret behind everyone's backs and uses it immediately to get away from there as fast as possible, leaving the rest of the inhabitants completely stranded, since they have absolutely no technical idea of how to make it all the way up to the surface on their own. After leaving everyone abandoned to their own devices on that mysterious, wild planet, our dynamic duo quickly boards the spaceship. But first, they load it up completely with all the valuable sap they were able to harvest from the area and head straight back to their comfortable garage on Earth, where they surely have the necessary scientific equipment to build themselves a pair of fresh, healthy new bodies. Upon arriving in the house's living room, Morty finds his sister Summer quietly reading on the couch and realizes with sheer amazement that they were only gone for a single morning. So the time on that strange planet must function in a totally different way, since, according to their own calculations, they lived through a few hundred full lifetimes trapped down in that chaotic underground world. She is holding a complex school biology textbook in her hands, and Morty kindly offers to help her out with her upcoming homework. After everything that happened, in less than a single day, he has personally experienced the evolution of every single living being that exists in nature, and he might just have a couple of excellent practical tips to help her with her complicated schoolwork.